Hi all, this is Dr. S.J. Kala, an Associate Professor of English at the Research Center of English, Fatima College, Madurai, Tamil Nadu. So now we are going to deal with the poem A Bird Came Down the Walk, written by the famous American poet Emily Dickinson. We all know about the wonderful poems of Emily Dickinson. She was a poet par excellence. And this poet, she did not travel a lot. She did not move around a lot to observe the world around her. But she is a typical example of a poet who just was at her home, watching things around her and writing soul-touching poems for all of us to read down the ages. And this particular piece, A Bird Came Down the Walk, is one such piece. So as I always do, let's now look at the poem that's before you. Yes, tell me how many stanzas are there? You're right, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 stanzas are there. Now, how many lines are there in each of these stanzas? Because why do we do this? As soon as you look at something, you just have to look at the physical structure of it, be it a water bottle or whatever it may be. And that way, I feel that you'll have to look at the structure of the poem first. So now there are 5 stanzas with 4 lines in each of these. That's to say it's a quatrain. When you have a stanza with 4 lines, it's a quatrain. So there are 5 quatrains in this particular poem. And what is this poem about? It's not about something very, very philosophical. It's just about what the poet notices in front of her house along the pathway. She sees a bird come down along the pathway. The whole poem is about that. She says, "A bird came down the walk. He did not know I saw. He bit an angleworm in halves and ate the fellow raw. And then he drank a dew from a convenient grass and then hopped sideways to the wall to let a beetle pass. He glanced with rapid eyes that hurried all abroad. They looked like frightened beads, I thought. He stirred his velvet head like one in danger, cautious. I offered him a crumb, and he unrolled his feathers and rowed him softer home than oars divide the ocean, to silver for a seam, or butterflies off banks of noon leap plashless as they swim." What a wonderful poem it is, isn't it? Yes. So here what happens, as Emily Dickinson is just seated maybe at her portico or at the balcony or at the porch or in the garden, she sees a bird coming down the walk. So when she sees the bird coming down the walk, she notices the bird, but does the bird notice her? Yes, you are right. The bird doesn't notice her, that the poet is watching it. She sees the bird. What happens? All of a sudden, the bird seems to be biting an angleworm. It's a kind of a worm. So it starts biting the angleworm. So it bites the angleworm, and you find that, it bites an angleworm, and the angleworm is into how she goes into graphic details of how the bird bites the angleworm. She says the bird bites the angleworm in halves, and then it doesn't grill, it doesn't bake, it doesn't cook. Rather, it eats the angleworm raw. It's not disgusting. That's the law of nature. That's how the cycle of nature works. So the bird here is portrayed as a merciless predator. You see that it's preying upon an angleworm. That too, it comes there, it just bites the angleworm in halves, and then you find the bird eating it all raw. Clear? After being filled with the worm, it now wants to quench its thirst. So where does it go? It just approaches a handy blade of grass, from which, or rather the poet says, uses a particular word, convenient grass. So I say handy grass. So the bird goes to the handy blade of grass, upon which there's a dew, and from that it just drinks the dew. How refreshing it must have been after that full meal, no? Yeah. So you see that Emily Dickinson makes us, or rather Emily Dickinson's poem is appealing to all the senses to all our senses. First, you get a visual picture of how the bird appears, is walking along is there along the walk, and then how it just starts eating the worm. So you get a taste of it rather, and then you see, so there's a visual picture, okay, so it pleases your eyes. Then she goes on to say that the bird starts drinking from the dew, so you get a kind of a taste of it, okay. And what does the bird now do? It then hops. Can you visualize it hopping? Okay, the bird then hops. Now not straight as we walk, but it's hopping sideways. Okay, so it is hopping sideways where to the wall. And now look here, this is where we have to know. It looks at a beetle. Now, it's a bird and it's a predator. Beetle is its prey. If it wanted, it could have just again bit the beetle, divided into halves and eaten it up. But we know that the bird is contented. So it doesn't touch upon the beetle, rather it allows the beetle to pass. But girls, let's pause here for a while, or my dear friends who are listening to this, let's pause here for a while and just pay attention to it. Imagine what would we do if we see something that we really appreciate or we like. Even if we are contented with what we have, even if we are satiated with what we had, we still would like to possess the next thing that's going alongside. But then an element of nature which has its own wildness, like the bird, it doesn't touch the beetle once it's full of its hunger. Okay, once its hunger is satiated, it doesn't touch the beetle, rather it allows the beetle to pass. Now here, this is where we need to ponder as human beings. Do we do that? Do we allow things to go by if we have experienced something? Do we have that contentment like the bird? I wonder whether we really have that. And this is one lesson that we'll have to learn from the wildest aspect of nature. Now, so now 2 stanzas are over. We move on to the 3rd stanza, where the look of the bird is described by Emily Dickinson. What a keen observer she is. She says, the bird glanced with rapid eyes. And why with rapid eyes? Quick. Okay, here, looking here, there, because it's also threatened. The bird, which was a predator so long, now feels threatened, and it's anxious that there shouldn't be anybody else coming in her way, that she shouldn't be frightened, or that she shouldn't be trapped by somebody else. So probably her eyes are moving with great speed from left to right. Probably it's panning from left to right. And then she's hurrying all. Not just that, Emily Dickinson goes on to say that the eyes look like frightened beads. And after that, Emily Dickinson starts to say, she says, I think the bird stirred its head this way. What sort of a head was it? It was a velvet head. So maybe, did you feel like touching the head? Isn't your tactile sense also pleased now? Okay, this particular piece of poem, which is written in the typical Dixon's style, that is iambic trimeter, also tells us about the predator's anxiety. Okay, so now we get to know about, so throughout, from in the first and the second stanza, we saw the frightening side of nature. But now, yeah, in what way did we see the frightening side of the nature? The way the bird ate the worm, the angleworm, we saw the frightening side of the nature. And now we see that, and at the same time, when the poet in the third stanza talks to us about the velvet head and the beady eyes, it's little beautiful. Okay, so the frightening side and the beautiful side both are juxtaposed here. Rather, beauty is juxtaposed with brutality. Beauty is juxtaposed with brutality. Okay, now, so you find at this point of time, the writer or the poet intervenes. Okay, and what does she do? She, like one in danger, cautious, so she understands that the bird feels threatened, that the bird feels that it is in danger, and therefore the poet is too cautious about the bird's feeling. And what does the poet do? She goes and offers a crumb of bread. But does the bird accept it? No. The bird unrolls its feathers as if they were all rolled up, tucked in. Okay. So now the bird unrolls his feathers, and she doesn't use the word flying. Look at the word choice of words are the uniqueness of a poet. Now, it's this choice of the word that makes Dickinson really very popular, and her poems very, very touching. She uses the word, and rode him softer home. So, to describe flight, she uses the description of aquatic references, okay, or description of how one moves around in water. So to talk about flight, she uses aquatic motions. What are the two aquatic motions or water related motions that she refers to? The first one is rowing and the second one is swimming. Are you with me? So now listen. She talks about the bird's flight, and to refer to the bird's flight, she makes use of aquatic motions, two aquatic motions. The first one is rowing. You see that you use an oar to row a boat. You must have, aren't you familiar with the poem rhyme, row, row, row a boat? So an oar is used. And then she uses the second aquatic motion to refer to the flight of the bird, and that's swimming. Okay, so the poet Dickinson says that the bird rows him softer home, and she says it's more softer than how an oar could divide an ocean. Two silver for a seam, so it's very soft. Or butterflies off banks of noon. So you see lots of butterflies flying along the noon. And so it's all beyond all that. This bird moves, and it moves as if it's moving on a great body of water, oaring and swimming without a splash. And that's what it's all about. Okay, now in this particular poem, we find Dickinson trying to talk to us or tell us about how nature maintains a balance between the beautiful and the brutal. How nature maintains a balance between, a delicate balance between the beautiful and the brutal on one side, and how it maintains a delicate balance between, how the poem is a delicate balance between fear and wonder. So, the bird that Emily Dickinson talks about is not just a predator, but it is also a prey. The moment there is a kind of uneasiness that is prevalent throughout the poem. Once at the beginning, you find that there is an uneasiness in us watching the bird preying upon the worm. Later on, the bird experiences uneasiness when it senses a kind of a lurking danger. Okay, so there is a sense of uneasiness all through the poem. Now, the bird is an emblem of unreachable wildness. The bird is an emblem of unreachable wildness that always distances or keeps man away from the different elements of nature. Okay, so hope you enjoyed this poem as I do. So enjoy, let's meet again later. Thank you.